Hey, and welcome to Trail Trials, a video review section of iRunFar.com. My name is Travis Liles, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Catamount from Brooks. Let's start off with the specs. The Catamount is a 9.3 ounce, 6mm heel-to-toe drop shoe built for going 100 miles. It has accents all over it talking about running 100 miles in a day. It's got a trail map on it. It even has a spot put your crew on there. So let's get up close and personal and see what it's all about. So let's start off by talking about the outsole. So on the outsole here, Brooks uses what's called their trail tack. And this compound is really for being kind of sticky, working in a lot of different conditions. Whether I was on dry ground, wet ground, gravel, slick rocks, wet wood bridges, this did a really nice job sort of across all of those types of environments. They do that, one, with a trail tack, and two, with kind of having these good enough lugs. They're not super deep, but they work. They are both directions here. You have the reverse direction lugs for braking when you're going downhill, and then you have the forward facing lugs here in the front when you're climbing to add traction as you're going up. On the bottom here, there is a rock shield, and it's sandwiched in between the midsole, of course, and our outsole here. It's not a full-length rock plate. It's a rock plate that starts right here at this back corner of the logo here, and then works its way up underneath the ball of your foot and around your toes. And it is not a overly hard rock shield. You can see the shoe's still pretty flexy, and that makes for a good feel while adding protection. I never noticed anything poking through or having that sort of fatigue. So I think the rock shield is, again, enough to provide protection, but it's not so much that it is a negative or gives the shoe a really stiff type of feeling. I'll call out just really quickly. You can probably see this line here running along the shoe. That is one example of the Western States Trail being called out here. This would be the track of that. So let's move up to the midsole, and probably the standout feature on the Catamount is the DNA flash. Their DNA midsole, and then they inject it with nitrogen. So a majority of the industry is playing around with or experimenting with new ways of making midsoles. And you see that with Nike's Zoom Foam, you see that with Ultra's Ego Boost, Saucony has their Everrun, Adidas has their Adi Boost. All of these are like higher end ways of making EVA foam and trying to do something different with them, making them more spongy, springy, durable, lightweight. Whatever that thing is that they're looking for, that's kind of what's going on here. So this foam is really fairly lightweight. I mean, for the amount of protection and sort of what this shoe is, the fact that it's under 10 ounces is fairly impressive, and a lot of that has to do with the lightness here of the midsole. So this midsole is a really, I think, strong performer. You can see by the look of it here, when you look straight down, this has got that rocker feel. It's not a highly aggressive rocker, but there's enough there that you're gonna get that kind of rolling type of feeling when you're wearing that. That combined with this DNA flash, which is a snappy type of foam. So you kind of feel that push forward and rebound in there versus just being more of a neutral type of foam. So performs well. It is a single density all the way around. So you can see this black here. There's not any breaks or blocks or like some other type of foam that's added to it. It's all the same all the way through. When you look at this, it's a little bit more of a flatter looking midsole, which I think is kind of standard Brooks, or even the Cascadia had that look. You do fit down inside of this a little bit. You know, your heel's gonna sit maybe around where the text Catamount is at here on the bottom. So it adds to a little bit of a secure fit. You sort of fit down inside of this shoe versus riding on top of it. Let's transition up to the upper. And the upper, for the most part, is fairly simple. It is all mesh with the exception of this rubber overlay that is all the way around the shoe, which adds protection, a little bit of water resistance on the shoe, and structure to the upper itself. I like to have a little bit more structure there because it keeps my foot in place, and especially if I'm going long distances, I want to keep that movement to a minimum so that friction stays down, and there's just enough here that lets that happen without overbuilding the shoe, without making it too heavy. On the front here, we have that overlay that adds to some structure of the toe, but you can still see it's fairly flexible, though all the way at the apex here, we're bringing the outsole around and have a fairly strong toe box, and it gets just a little bit looser the farther away we get from the very tip of the shoe. You can see that that overlay is all the way around, and there are some cutouts in here at the toe, here towards the back. That mesh is then exposed here and lets water get out of the shoe. So water crossings and those sort of things, the shoe's gonna drain fairly well. A couple other things aesthetically I'm gonna point out here. Here's another example of the Western States Trail, and medially there is another example of the Western States Trail. So they're really going for something here. And then even here on the back, you can see the words "My Crew," where you write your crew's name on here. And then one more spot on the tongue, and I'll give you a better view of that also. But it says 100 miles, run happy. So make no mistake what Brooks is going after it on this shoe. I mean, it is not hidden. And in fact, I think the last time I remember sort of this amount of attention was probably on the Cascadia 4. So this isn't the first time Brooks has done something like this. I do think it's interesting that it is happening on another shoe other than the Cascadia. So the last couple of things here I want to call out from a structure standpoint, from a shoe wrap standpoint of keeping the shoe locked into your foot. Underneath all of these laces, you can't see it because it's sandwiched in between the outer layer of mesh and then the inner sock liner, are some sort of straps that connect the lace to the underneath of the shoe or to the midsole that allows this shoe to lock in. And you can't see it visually, but if you rub your hands through here, you can kind of you can feel where they are. So each one of the eyelets has an individual strap inside of the shoe. It's flat. You don't notice it by wearing it. Just really if you run your hand through it and give it a feel, that gets this shoe locked in fairly well. If you have a really, really narrow heel, this could be a problem because there is not a lace beyond this top one here, but you might be able to punch another one through because there's still a little bit of that rubber overlay on here. The heel cup is fairly flexible, so if we look here, it collapses, so there's not a hard piece of plastic in here anywhere. It's got a little bit of structure to it, but again, it's made by this overlay is the structure that we're adding to it. You can see that it folds at that point, but there's nothing really inside of here that is hard and has that kind of rigid feel. And then the last thing I'll call out besides the wording on the tongue is that the tongue is sort of in this middle ground. I would have liked to seen a little bit more padding on it, but I think they did an okay job of sort of sitting in the middle of what the industry tends to be doing. There's a middle thickness tongue here, but then they did the weight savings by, you can see those little holes in there. And I think one, you're going to get a little bit of ventilation out of that, but it's also weight savings. Lastly, you have a gaiter spot right here in the back to attach your gaiters to. So overall, I think what you have here in this package is just something that does well across a lot of different environments. They kept the necessary things, they cut away some of the stuff that they didn't need, and you're able to have a shoe that can do a lot at under 10 ounces, provide some protection, provide some comfort, and hopefully keep you going for a long time. In closing, I think Brooks has a hit on their hands. I have not worn Brooks in a long time, mainly because the Cascadia just hasn't changed. And that's a really positive thing. We don't see a lot of that in the shoe running industry anymore, where we get a model that really just sort of gradually changes over time. In fact, if you'd have asked me 5 years ago what I thought the Cascadia would have been, it would have been this shoe. This shoe meets all the current check boxes, I think, of what we're seeing in trail running shoes. It's got a little bit of that rocker feel to it. It's got a advanced type of foam that's very springy yet protective. It's cushiony. Nike's got their foam, Adidas has their foam, Ultra has their foam. Everybody's got like a special sort of new type of foam compound, and that's what's going on here. It's a secure fit. It's got enough protection underfoot that it keeps things from poking through, but doesn't feel so rigid that you can't move fast and sort of get the feel of the trail that feels fast about it. And then the lugs are all purpose. It works across a whole bunch of different terrains. And again, you get into this like spot of it's a shoe that I think I gravitate towards a lot because it does a lot of things well. I don't know that it does anything really well specifically. It's not the best downhill shoe I have. It's not the best uphill shoe I have. It's not the grippiest shoe that I have. But it covers enough of those boxes that when you're covering a long distance, like 100 miles, like this shoe is specifically being pointed towards with, you know, these trail maps and putting your crew name on here. I think that's what you're looking for. And with all of those components being present here on this shoe in an updated package, in a shoe that breathes well, that's attached to your foot, it just does a lot of things that I think you're gonna like when you're going a long distance and you're getting into stuff that is changing. You hit rugged terrain, you hit uphills, you hit downhills, you hit road sections. You don't have to think about changing into something else. And I think that's what they're going for, and I think they did a pretty good job here. So, questions, comments, feedback of your own, place those below this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.